Title: The Reflection in Room 13. Chapter 1. The Arrival. Claire Donovan had always been drawn to places shrouded in mystery. Growing up in the shadow of her father's unexplained disappearance, she was haunted by questions left unanswered and stories untold. Each forgotten building, every whispered legend, felt like a puzzle piece she needed to fit into the larger picture of understanding the unknown. For Claire, investigating the eerie and the inexplicable wasn't just a job, it was a way to confront the darkness that had followed her since childhood, hoping that each discovery might bring her closer to the truth she feared and craved the most. As a freelance journalist, she thrived on unraveling dark histories, digging up secrets buried beneath layers of dust and denial. When she received an anonymous tip about the abandoned Hollow Creek Hotel, a shiver of anticipation coursed through her veins. The email was brief, cryptic even. "If you want a story worth dying for, check Room 13. The hotel stood like a forgotten relic on the outskirts of Hollow Creek, its once grand facade crumbling, windows shattered like fractured memories. Claire parked her car under a dying oak, its gnarled branches clawing at the overcast sky. The building loomed ahead, wrapped in an unsettling silence broken only by the occasional whisper of the wind. She pushed open the rusted front doors, their hinges groaning in protest. The lobby greeted her with decay-faded wallpaper peeling like dead skin, dusty chandeliers dangling precariously. But it was the mirror above the reception desk that caught her eye. Cracked and stained, it reflected not her image, but something darker, something that flickered at the edges of her vision. Chapter 2. Room 13. Armed with a flashlight and her recorder, Claire navigated the creaking hallways. Room 13 was easy to find. Unlike the other doors, its number had been violently scratched out, replaced with deep gouges as if someone had tried to erase its existence. She hesitated, her hand on the tarnished doorknob. The air grew colder, a breath of ice against her neck. She shook it off, blaming the drafty corridors, and turned the handle. The room was suffocatingly dark, the faint beam from her flashlight struggling to pierce the gloom. Dust danced like restless spirits in the stale air. The furniture was overturned, sheets stained with something dark and dried, but it was the mirror above the cracked dresser that made her blood run cold. Unlike the one in the lobby, this mirror was pristine, untouched by time. A faint, unnatural glow seemed to pulse from its edges, casting eerie tendrils of light that slithered across the cracked walls like ghostly fingers. The air grew heavier around it, thick with a metallic tang that clung to the back of her throat. As Claire approached, the temperature dropped sharply, her breath misting in front of her face despite the stagnant air. The glass itself felt wrong too smooth, almost liquid in texture, reflecting not the room but a distorted, darker version of reality where shadows writhed independently, as if aware of her presence. But it didn't reflect the room as it was. Instead, it showed a version twisted by shadows. The furniture was upright, the bed made. But standing in the corner was a figure. A man. Claire spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. She turned back to the mirror. The figure remained, closer now, its face obscured by darkness. Chapter 3. The Unraveling. Over the next few days, Claire became obsessed. She camped out in Room 13, documenting everything. The figure in the mirror moved when she wasn't looking, always inching closer. She found old newspapers buried in the hotel archives, yellowed with age. They spoke of disappearances, people who checked into Room 13 and were never seen again. Her dreams grew darker. She saw the man from the mirror standing at the foot of her bed, whispering things she couldn't understand. His voice was a low, guttural hum, layered with distorted echoes, like multiple voices speaking out of sync. Shadows slithered along the walls, forming shapes that melted into the darkness as soon as she tried to focus on them. Flickering lights hung overhead, casting unnatural, jerky silhouettes. Sometimes she heard the faint sound of fingernails scraping against glass, a rhythmic, grating noise that grew louder until it drowned out her own thoughts. In one dream, when she dared to look directly at his face, it fragmented like shattered porcelain, revealing a hollow void filled with endless darkness. She woke up with bruises she couldn't explain, scratches on her arms as if from invisible claws. Her recorder picked up voices soft, pleading, and sometimes screaming. "Help me. He's watching. The mirror lies." Claire realized it wasn't just a haunting. The mirror was a gateway, a thin veil between reality and something else. Something hungry. Chapter 4. Crossing Over. Determined to uncover the truth, Claire decided to confront the entity. Armed with nothing but her recorder and a flickering flashlight, she stood before the mirror. "Who are you?" she demanded. The figure smiled. The glass rippled like water, and before she could react, hands shot out, pulling her into the mirror world. She found herself in a distorted version of room 13, the colors wrong, the shadows alive. The air was unnervingly still, thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to hum just beneath the threshold of hearing. Shadows clung to the corners, stretching unnaturally long, as if reluctant to let go of their grip on the walls. A faint, rhythmic creaking echoed from somewhere unseen, like footsteps pacing back and forth, though no one was there. Claire's heartbeat thudded in her ears, blending with the faint hiss of static that seemed to seep from the very walls. The temperature plummeted, her breath visible in trembling puffs. She wasn't alone. The man from the mirror was there, his face a mask of emptiness, eyes voids that swallowed light. He whispered her name, over and over, each time eroding her sense of self. Chapter 5. The reflection remains. Weeks later, the Hollow Creek Hotel was slated for demolition. Workers found Claire's recorder on the dusty floor of room 13. It contained hours of audio, most of it static. But if you listened closely, you could hear her voice. "I'm still here. Don't look in the mirror." And sometimes, when the light hits just right, if you stand in front of the mirror in the ruins of room 13, you might see her reflection. But it won't be yours. Her eyes will meet yours through the glass, unblinking and hollow, as if she's peering straight into your soul. And if you watch long enough, you might catch her reflection smiling even when you're not.